Alejandro has jury duty. So we're going to tell you how to get out of jury duty. This is the Lawyer Dana Show. First thing I got to tell you, don't try and get out of jury duty. Go do it. It's a civic duty. And it's the one way that you have the ability to influence your actual city, your environment, the people that are around you. When you vote for president, you're one in 160 million. You're eyedropper in the ocean. If you're sitting on a jury, sometimes it's a jury of 6, sometimes it's a jury of 12. And sometimes it has to be unanimous. That means that you have the power over one person's life, the ultimate and complete power. It's the most important right that you actually have in the United States. You're the last line of defense that determines whether or not an innocent person goes to jail, or whether or not a parent keeps custody of their child,
or whether or not someone bad needs to go to jail.
Right? Or whether or not people get to keep the money that they've earned, or that all kinds of injustices. Mm-hmm. The whole point of our system is that the jury trial is what makes America America. It's one of the things that makes America great. Your service, that's why they call it a service, is necessary. It's you have to do that. So don't try and get out of jury duty. But if you're going to do it, here's the background of what happens in a jury trial. So they call you for jury duty, and it's supposed to be random, although I think in New York and some of these juries that are coming up against Donald Trump, probably not. That's why they're trying to do it in Washington, D.C., where the whole city is full of liberal and establishment people so that they can get a bad jury against their political opponents. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to discuss that, I think, maybe, hopefully. If you're a registered voter, then or you're registered for the Selective Service anyway, they randomly will send you out a subpoena that says you need to show up for jury duty. So on that card, they're going to have a few different options. If you're a full-time caretaker of someone who's disabled, or if you have certain young children, there's a variety of different reasons that'll be indicated on the card that will allow you to opt out of jury service this time. But assuming that you don't have any of those, when you get there, what's going to happen is there's, I'll describe how it is, for example, in Collin County. There's this big central jury room, and they filled up with everybody that's called for jury duty. And they have some weeks that are jury weeks, and other weeks are not jury weeks. So on the jury week, they'll have, in a variety of different courtrooms in the courthouse, we'll have jury trials scheduled. Some of those will go, some of them won't. Most of them won't go because sometimes they're either not ready for the trial, or they'll settle in order to avoid having to go to the trial. They've waited to the last minute or for whatever reason. But you'll be down there. You'll watch a video telling you kind of how things are going to go and what's going to go on. And then a lot of the people that are there, if they don't need the jury, or if enough of the cases settle, then a lot of the jurors that get called down will just get dismissed, and will just watch the video, and then you'll be out in like an hour, maybe 2. Other times, you'll be randomly selected out of that group to then go up to certain courtrooms. And they'll start with like 30, 35 jurors, and they'll put you in the audience rows. And there'll be 3 rows, usually 10 or 12 of the rows. And so in the district court, like for a family law case, it's 12 jurors, and each side gets 6 strikes. So 6 of the potential jurors in the pool, they can strike out for any particular reason. Well, if they're taking the first 12 and then 6 can be struck, if you're in the first 24, then you're in what's called the strike range. You may or may not get struck, and you might wind up being on the jury. At the beginning of the process, they do this thing called voir dire. And what voir dire means is literally it's a French phrase that's translated as tell the truth. And your job as a potential juror is simply to tell the truth. And so both lawyers and even the judge are going to ask you some questions, and they can be a wide range of different type of questions. But what they're looking for is to determine whether or not you might be biased or prejudiced against either side. Because if you're prejudiced for or against either side, then you're not a qualified juror, and you would get what's called struck for cause. If you're struck for cause, then, for example, out of the, let's say there's 36 people that are potential jurors. Well, your strike zone went from 24 to 26 if there's 2 people that are struck for cause in that first part of the panel. So sometimes in criminal trials, I've heard of an entire panel where they've struck 100 people out of the panel and can't get qualified jurors because they, for example, might be prejudiced for or against police officers. If you go in there and you say, I think that a police officer is more likely to lie than a regular person, you're gone. If you say, I think that a police officer is more likely to tell the truth than a regular person, you're gone. You have to be neutral. You cannot judge the facts of a case before you've heard the facts. The fact that somebody is sitting there and just simply accused of a crime, anybody can be accused of a crime at any time for any reason by anyone. And just the fact that they were indicted or accused of the crime is no evidence. And as a matter of fact, if the state does not put on any evidence, you must acquit the person and vote not guilty because there's a presumption of innocence. What that means is they start off presumed not guilty. That's how they start off. And you can't vote guilty not until after the state proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the person is guilty. And so if you say, well, I can tell by looking at him right now that he's guilty. I mean, look, you can see guilt all over him. You're gone. You're out because you're not a good neutral juror. What they're looking for is somebody who is going to be able to listen to these facts and make a determination only on what's presented and not personal knowledge, not your personal experience. You can't do your own research. You can't do any of those things. Your job is simply to determine the facts. And if you determine certain facts, then you are required to rule in certain ways. And what they're looking for is neutral jurors. And then they get, for whatever reason, but it can't be race, it can't be national origin. There are certain different reasons why they cannot use their peremptory strikes. Like, for example, they can't say, well, I'm going to, I have a, XYZ race person, so I want to make sure I strike all the non-XYZ race jurors. You can't do that. And so, which has been a tactic that's been tried many times. You have to give a non-gender or non-race type of reason why you're striking that person. But the reason can be, I just didn't like the way they were looking at my client, or I just didn't get a good feeling about them, or my legal assistant, saw them like snicker when I asked a particular question. What they're trying to do is just learn about the people that are in the jury. So what you get is you get to strike out the certain people. You get to strike out people for cause. Each side gets 6 strikes, or if it's a 6-person jury, you get 3 strikes. And then whoever is left over, they take the first 12 or the first 6, and that's how you get onto the jury. So if you want to go in there and say, nope, I think they're guilty no matter what, you're not changing my mind, okay, now you don't have to do jury duty. And if you're that type of person, then maybe
you say, I believe in the death penalty.
Well,
they'll say, lots of times they won't.
Well, if it's a death penalty case and you say, under no circumstances could I give someone the death penalty, even if the state proves it, I won't give somebody the death penalty. You can't sit on the jury. Yeah. But if you're going to be somebody that goes in there and intentionally just lies because you don't want to be on and do jury duty, just don't do that. Be a good person. Always be a good person. Always make the next best decision that you can, whatever decision that you're confronted with, and be honest, because to live a life of honesty and truth is better than to live a life of lies and manipulation. Even if you think you got away with it now, you won't. It will come back and get you one way or the other. So please do your civic duty. Show up for jury duty. Hey, look, if it's not a convenient time this time, or for whatever reason, if there's something that you can delay it or whatever, fine. But it's a civic duty, and it's a privilege as an American. You get to be the king. You get to be the queen. You get to be the ruler. All the power over these people's lives who have shown up and are asking you to please help us out and make a decision and solve this problem so that we don't have to resort to murder in the streets or violence in the streets. We have an orderly system of how to organize society and how to resolve our conflicts. And that's through the service of good citizens to go and make the decisions that Solomon and the kings used to have to decide. If you don't want to be a subject, if you want to be a citizen, That is part of the work and the privilege that you get in order to be a citizen. So be a good citizen. Subscribe to the Lawyer Dana Show, and we'll see you in the next episode.